Teacher Kozub.
Hello, it's Mr. Kozub. I'm going to be talking today about writing a 5-paragraph essay. I'm not going to go into complete detail about how to do this because I have written out some guidelines and a sample essay as well in some documents. So I'm just going to show you those documents and go through them in a little bit of detail, but I'm not going to go through the whole procedure because I've already put that information into another place. So you'll see that I have these documents on my desktop, and you might not have them on your computer. You might have to download them, but I will link to them so you can find them. And I'm going to start with this first one, which says 5-paragraph essay information. So I'm just going to open this. I'm going to zoom out a tiny bit. Now, in this document, I explain what a 5-paragraph essay is. And what it is it's an essay which is written in 5 paragraphs, which probably makes sense. And the point of the 5-paragraph essay is that it's an easy way to structure your essay, and it's organized, and every paragraph plays a role, and it outlines your central idea, because your essay has to have a central idea or argument. And what that argument is called your thesis statement. Now, your thesis statement is going to be in your introduction. So I'm just going to show you here. So you can see I have an introduction where it has some things it does, gets the reader's attention, introduces the topic that you'll be writing about, and states your thesis. And your thesis, again, is your argument of your essay. So for an example thesis, suppose your topic were homework. Well, your thesis could be something like, homework should not be given to middle school students. Okay, so your introduction, it basically sets out that information. The next 3 paragraphs kind of go together. They're called your body paragraphs, and they're used to advance 3 major points that will back up your thesis. So I'm just going to scroll down here. This is all available to you. Your body paragraphs, the 3 points you might be trying to make are that, continuing on the homework example, homework takes up time that could be better spent on more important activities and hobbies. So that could be your first point. Your second point could be homework is usually busy work that does not promote true learning. And your third point could be homework creates unhealthy levels of stress and anxiety for students. So the idea is that each of these 3 points is then expanded upon in one of these 3 body paragraphs here. So the first body paragraph, which is actually paragraph 2 overall, will say your first point, and it will give some specific details and examples to support that point. And the other 2 body paragraphs will do the same thing for those other 2 points. So once you've done all that, you've really explained the reasoning for your argument, and the only thing to do left is to write a conclusion. And the conclusion basically recaps those 3 points that you made in your paragraphs above. It restates your thesis, and ideally it does this. It raises the stakes. And what that means is that it takes the central thesis or the argument of your essay, and it somehow makes it seem bigger and more important. So maybe you're not just talking about how homework matters to middle school students, but somehow how it matters to society as a whole. And I give some examples for how to do that in here. So that's the basic overall structure of the 5-paragraph essay. Now there's also a YouTube video that I would suggest you watch, and I'm just going to search for it quickly, opening my browser, and I'm going to go to YouTube, and I'm going to, in here, search for 5-paragraph essay. And you'll see that this is the result I suggest you look at. It's by David Taylor, and I'll just show it to you for a second. I suppose this is David Taylor, and he basically, I'll just jump ahead a bit, he basically explains all the components of the 5-paragraph essay, and he does also give some good information about how to come up with a thesis statement. And he basically explains, he shows you here's an organizer you can use as well to organize the format of your 5-paragraph essay. So I suggest watching this video because he sort of breaks it down in a little bit more detail. Okay, moving along. One thing that's important about an essay is that you have to use transitions. And a transition is a word or a phrase that moves from one idea to the next idea. The reason this is important in an essay is because you have to move from your introduction to your first body paragraph, etc., etc., and you want the writing to feel connected as you're moving through your essay. So some transitional words that you can use are things like first, another reason for this, in addition to this. This type of language helps your writing move along, And the other thing about transitions is you want to try to use some variety. So you don't want to use the same words. You don't want to be like the first reason, the second reason. You want to find a way to change it up. So one reason for da 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 is this, as well as that first reason. This should also be considered. You want your writing to have variety. That's the key thing that makes writing good, really, or one of the key things. Now I'm also linking in here a link to a list of some transitional words. So I'll just open up the browser again here, and I'll show you. So this website here, English Language Smart Words, it has a lot of good transitional words and phrases that you can use. First, second, third, in light of, not to mention, and you can sound very smart and have a good time putting some of these into your essay. These are also things that can be added in revision. So you might start off not using a lot of transition words, and you might revise and go back and say, maybe as well as is a good way to link these two ideas together. Okay, there's also opposition words, conversely, besides, etc., etc. Look through these. You're going to get some good ideas in here. Okay, all right. Carrying on. So in this document, I have it broken down, what each paragraph does, how to do it, how to create a good hook to draw your reader's attention in. And I have some examples in here as well. I'm not going to go through that right now. I'll let you do that on your own. Same thing for conclusion paragraph. And I'm mentioning here that an essay is formal writing. So what that means is that we don't use the word I in an essay. It is written from your point of view, but you just don't use the word I. So you have to find other ways to write so that's not sounding like it's from your point of view. Another thing is you don't use contractions in your writing. And a contraction is a word like don't, shouldn't. These are basically words that have been shortened. So don't really means do not. So you, in fact, would not use the word don't. You would write out the two words do not. That's just how formal writing is done. And you're avoiding unnecessary words like such as this is like a reason for, or well, I think that, or this is very good. You just want to be concise and to the point. You don't want to have sort of these words that don't do a lot of good for you in your essay. They don't help. Right? You should have a title. Your title should be somehow catchy, but it should also be to the point. And your essay is going to be in MLA format. Okay. There's a bunch of tips in here. I do say that you might actually want to write your body paragraphs first and then your conclusion and introduction. I find that it's easier to write the body paragraphs first because that's the stuff that you're really saying. And then once you say the stuff, it's sort of easier to know how to sum it up in your introduction and conclusion. Same goes for the title. Excuse me. You're going to want to do all the normal revising tricks. You're going to revise, you're going to proofread, you're going to try to fix up grammar, you're going to try to add variety, you're going to try to use different types of words. And using maybe a thesaurus or using some examples is going to help you with that. You may wish to use a graphic organizer to help structure your essay. So I've linked one here for you, and I'll show you what it looks like. And it's basically just a document like this. So in here you can sort of in point form explain what's going in your introduction, say what your thesis is, and just you can do this in point form. Give yourself some things you're going to talk about for each paragraph. Same for the conclusion. And then what's helpful about this is that when you're writing, you can look back at this and you'll have everything in front of you. So then you'll be able to easily take this and just write it into the essay, adding those transitional words as you go through. So you might wish to use that. You don't need to use this, but it can be helpful. Going back here now. And one point I'd like to make is it's easy to, when you're writing something like an essay, to try to be fancy or sound very writerly. You're still yourself. You still have your own writing voice. So you shouldn't be trying to write like someone you're not. Okay, so not to say that you shouldn't experiment with writing in a different way. You should, but you don't want to overdo it. The real thing a good essay does well is it's clear and it's to the point, because what's the point of an essay? Well, it's to make your argument. So you want to make your argument extremely clearly. If you're muddying it up by putting in a lot of complicated words, that's not necessarily doing the right job. So your goal is to explain your argument in the clearest way possible. This will make it strong. At the same time, keep developing your own voice. You have your own voice, you have your own personality, you have your own style. So use that to your advantage. Okay, so this is some introductory information. I ask you to go through and look at this in more detail. I'm also going to show you the sample essay that I've written. And I wrote this essay about homework. And you can see I titled, in fact, The Hazards of Homework, which I thought was a pretty good title, a little bit of alliteration in there. All right, so I did write this whole essay, and it's connected to some of the information presented in this document. And you can see it's in MLA format. This is my name, pretend student. The teacher would be me, header, all that good stuff. Okay, so you can see paragraph 1, introduction. Whoops, I don't know what I did there. Paragraph 1 is your introduction. You've got your first body paragraph, second body paragraph, third body paragraph, all indented, by the way. Fourth, oh, did I miscount? I did. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 conclusion here. Now, I'm not going to go through this whole essay as well either, because I'm going to ask you to read it. And as you read, I want you to pay attention to what am I doing and what works. Okay, I'm going to clue you into a few things. So the thesis statement right here, for these reasons, schools should abolish the practice of giving homework to middle school students. You probably like this premise, right? Your teacher's arguing for why you shouldn't get homework at school. Well, there you go. So this is my thesis, and everything in here backs up this idea. I'd like you to notice the transitional words I use. So while, at the same time. Okay, let's see. In addition to. So things like that, those words that structure and lead and connect ideas together. The final reason, etc. I'd also like you to notice as you're reading how I use some examples, I use some lists, I try to have some imagery in some way in my writing. So here's a good sentence with that. However, many teenagers find their evenings taken up solely in the unrewarding and seemingly never-ending tasks of writing lab reports, working through math problems, typing up papers, and reading textbooks. So you can see I have a list here, and you can see I've varied the way I wrote this, right? So it's writing lab reports, working through math problems, typing up papers, and reading textbooks. So I'm also cluing into the use of verbs. Notice how each verb is different and gives a different idea. If I were to just say writing lab reports, writing math problems, writing papers, writing textbooks, you can see that it would get repetitive. So I'm changing the verbs to add a little bit of variety. And the imagery too, you can see these kids in your mind doing this, right? Whew, that's no fun. And then I also said, some other strong words, unrewarding, seemingly never ending. Stuff like that adds a little bit of flair. Okay, carrying on. I'll let you read through this. And I just wanted to finally point out that here you have at the bottom, I've put some notes and just sort of summing up some of this stuff. So please look at this. You don't need to write these notes when you're doing your essay. This is just me including this for you. And you don't need a works cited for this essay, or I didn't, because I'm not referencing anything. There's no quote, there's no book I'm referencing, so there's no need for a works cited page in this case. Okay, and the other document that I'll provide you that I've given you before is the MLA Format Handout, which looks like this and explains how do you do MLA format. And we've talked about this before, but I just wanted to remind you that this is here for you. And I also on my YouTube channel have videos about how to set up MLA format for Word Online and for Word Desktop Edition, so that can also be helpful for you. Okay, so this is some introductory information about how to write a 5-paragraph essay. I hope you find this useful for when you're doing your own writing. And if you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to let me know what they are so that I can best support you as you go through this. Thanks.